So, welcome B-Sides. Thanks for having me today. It's an honor for me to be here in front of this nice audience. As already said, I've been working for a couple of companies and institutions. Today this is a private talk, so here's my disclaimer. Everything that I say is my private thing, because some of them may say NEIN to the things I will be saying. So when I got the first ask to potentially do this keynote here at B-Sides 9th edition, obviously I could not say NEIN. And saying no in general is hard. And why is that? It's because everyone knows how it feels to get a no. As already said in the introduction, we all know if we hear a no, already from being a child, there is this one word, only 2 letters, in German 4, yet very powerful, which is the word no. And we know this from being a child that asks for something. I mean, I remember it well from myself, right? Can I have more candy? No. Can I stay out with my friends late night, playing in the dirt? No. Can I go to school and wear my new heavy metal t-shirt with skulls and bones on it and my studded leather jacket? No. Can I then at least dress up like my favorite action heroes, Arnold Schwarzenegger, in military look when I go to school? No. I mean, some of these examples were a little bit special, but you got the point. So we all grow up with the word no being attributed to denial and rejection. And thus, it's easier for us to say yes over no sometimes, because who wants to reject a colleague or a friend? And so many of us tend to say rather yes to things. But there may be good reasons for giving a no. When you're a child, you don't know. You are not able in most cases to take informed decisions. That's why your parents do it for you. They're decision makers, hopefully. So, eating more candy, no, not a good idea. It's unhealthy. Staying out with your friends late night, no. You have to do your homework first. Dressing up with your heavy metal t-shirt and your studded leather jacket, no. You're a 7-year-old and not Alice Cooper. Secretly, I did it anyways, but please don't tell my mom. And now, dressing up like action heroes like Arnold Schwarzenegger at school is not an option. Because being an action hero is a very dangerous job, and it's a full-time job. So, here's the thing though. As already said, no is the opposite of yes. So if you say no to something, you're also saying not yes, which means you're deciding to not do something. So for today, imagine the yes as being the attacker side, because you're actually tackling something, and being the no, the defensive side of things, because you're trying to prevent things. Because in the end, if you're saying no to something, it protects you also from effects of potentially having said yes. And as a grown-up, I can overcome this. Of course, I can now, eat up as much candy as I want. I can wear whatever I want. I can stay late out as long as I want. But sometimes it needs hard lessons, realizing that having said no would have been actually the better option. So to this end, I advocate today towards leveraging the power of no and make informed decisions. Okay, yes, blah, blah, blah. What does this now have to do with security? And how can it apply to security? So looking in security, there is so many facets of no's. You can say no to so many different things. I'm sure you have seen, experienced, or even suffered from at least one of those things here. And there is an endless listing that would not fit on this slide. So you can say no to many things. You can also say more generally no to things like getting more budget, to added workload for your teams. You can also say no to your users, like in the sense of don't do this or that. And you can also say no to attackers by raising up your shields. And moreover, there can be even more no's. No more vulnerabilities, no more errors, no more additional security rules, whatever. And lastly, my most famous one, or my personal favorite, failed assumptions. Nobody would ever do this, and nobody can ever access this, and nobody would ever try this, and of course nobody can ever hack this. So where is there no at all now in security, and where do no's come from? So first of all, there must be someone or something that says no, right? And someone or something you can possibly say no to. And secondly, in security, it's mainly about trust. So whom can I trust? And trust requires humans in the end to some extent, because of course machines can also establish trust amongst each other, but in the end it's humans who are looking for whom they can trust. And my personal experience with trust goes like this. Like, would you trust that guy? So when I was young, long time ago, I'm a very old man, I was already excited about computers when we had our first Intel 286 PC at home or something. And with that passion, I said, okay, I wanted to go and study computer science at a college. Luckily, in my hometown, there was a college, so I went there, applying, and I was going to the secretary there, and she looked at me and she said, no. And I was like, why no? And she said, we don't need people like you here. And now you would likely need maybe some more context, because that guy was actually me back then. And that's already the compromise, right? Because it was even more colorful and way more extreme than you can see on this picture. So when I had to renew my passport and went to the authorities to renew it, you guessed it already, they said no. We don't issue a passport for this, right? So we made a compromise that at least we do it in grayscale, so it's like, not as dramatic. But back to the college. So what did I do? I knew I had to change something. So I eventually went home. I cut my hair, dressed up nicely and shiny. And sometimes later, again, I was there applying for the college, handed in all my records. I only had A grades, by the way. And this time it was an entirely different talk. So she didn't even recognize it was me again. So I was accepted. I did my studies there, graduated, and years later, after the graduation ceremony, I told her this story. And she, in the first place, didn't believe it. But in the end, she said, you have found your way, and it's good the way it is. And if I have learned a lesson in life, then if you trust yourself and trust in what you're doing, performance and your ambitions are more important than your look. And that's actually a lesson I have learned multiple times in my life, but not this time. That did not happen. I just want to enjoy this particular moment when you potentially trust me well enough to believe that this story that I just told you was true. What really happened was the following. When she said to me, no, we don't people like you here, I was like, I showed her one of my fingers and said, I don't know people like you either, and I left. Because no matter whatever I would do, how good my grades would be, it wouldn't change her mind, it wouldn't change her trust in me. But at that time, of course, I didn't know this. I was just an angry teenager. So in the end, I applied for another college in another town, which was even more hard, they said. And since it was remote, I could first apply via email, so they accepted me. And then the surprise was big when they saw me for the first time, but it was already too late for a no. So that way, I changed the game by being first accepted and later on rejected. Because then they said to me like, people like you, they will have a hard time here. And I did. But mainly not due to my look, but more to my performance. That's another story. So, in the end, the lesson I learned, a lesson that money can never buy, is trusting in myself, as I already said in the first part in the story, and trusting in my performance and my ambitions is more important than the look. And this is actually what I try to do also to others, how you want to be treated and conceived, because this is one important part of establishing trust amongst humans. Now, as we know about trust between humans, we can also recognize that computers or IT systems or cyber, how we call it nowadays, are sort of socio-technical systems. So there is always an interaction with humans to some extent, and interactions with humans are sometimes unpredictable. That's what raises the fun in security, right? And so this may be the reason why we can assume at this point there may be different perspectives potentially for why someone is saying yes or no. And in security, we have attackers, we have defenders who are in a constant arms race, right? Thank you, Captain Obvious. Everyone knows that. There is also, of course, a victim who is to some extent impacted by this. So the affected one, the one who has the damage. And they have different roles. The attacker is abusing, the defender is acting as a savior, the victim is crying helpless, and so on. And they have different behaviors which also could change over time. They have their very own perspective. And to some extent, this can relate to the well-known drama triangle, where you have the persecutor, the rescuer, and the victim with these different roles. And people very often step into this drama triangle in many ways, often even without noticing, and the roles also can circle without noticing, probably. And the point is that being in this triangle, potentially even without knowing, everything is blocked, right? Because then the blame game starts. And we also can see this in security, right? So the security department can say to the users, you are so stupid, you are never obeying our rules. The security department can say to management, you never give us the budget that we would actually need. Or also the other way around. The user can say to the security department, it's such a hassle and such a slow thing to work with your shitty systems because they're so secure, but I cannot use them anymore. Or a client that always points to his customer saying he does not understand the need for security. Or your team that does not want to accept even more workload. So there's plenty of examples for all these roles ending up in a blocking situation, and in this case there's no further progress made, especially when it comes to security. So what if a no now could be turned into a yes? There's two things in the first place. The first is escape the triangle, step out of the drama triangle and the drama. And the second one is the answer is always 42, no, today it's 49, or in B-sides words, is fear 9. So the answer to this is, it's a bad one. I needed to do it. The message is, don't fear the no. Instead, try to change the game, find game changers that can help you turning no's into yes. And for today, I brought 4 examples of generic examples, but 4 things I found that helped turning no's into a yes. First thing is technical disruption. We are on the edge of AI and quantum computers, and you name it, there's many things moving. The second is customer requirements and market requirements. So what do they actually expect? The third one is standards and regulation, boring one. And the fourth one is an experienceable added value of security. Now, for the first one, does anyone remind still this? Okay, that's great. Back then, in the 1990s, there was the computer, and in most cases it was really one computer and the internet. And in order to be in the internet, you just clicked on this, and it would access. Yeah, exactly. And you were in the internet, just connected to your modem. There was nothing in between, literally. So if you remember, there was not a firewall. A firewall was introduced with Service Pack 2. And the tougher guys later on, they had their own firewall, dedicated firewall, which had mainly the purpose to prevent the bad evil outside from the good inside. So you can see it here, red outside, bad, good inside. So that was the security paradigm at that time. So it was not so complex, right? And this has changed little, so actually much has changed since then. So because as of today, the internet did not get just more colored, it is also more moving, more interactive, it is ubiquitous, it's social, sort of, and lastly, it also changes things in the physical world. And while we have seen many technological advancements, which also changed some of previous assumptions and paradigms, we have to deal with a couple of new things. So just think of bandwidth, internet connectivity. So if you think of the speed of 5G, even if you have coverage, it can be so fast that it's not really worth loading some data from a local system. It can be as fast or even faster if you get it from the network. So the former inside-outside thingies may be blurred. And then we see a lot of other things that have been introduced and that we have fun with today. Attacks can come from the inside. We have bring your own device things. We have an ongoing interconnection of IT and OT, and so on and so on. And with this, a lot of former paradigms have also changed. So the Windows 95 inside-outside perimeter is one example. Another example could be introduced by the rise of AI agents. So they may add probably an entirely new perimeter across systems and functions. And the point of all this is that things that have been okay in the past, so where you would say, yes, it's a good idea to connect my Windows 95 PC without any firewall or something directly to the internet, are nowadays clearly a no. And likewise, things which may be nowadays a yes may turn into a no in future due to such things that are happening in many places. Just think of a simple example, then I stop about this one, otherwise the talk will get like forever. One thing that is really added back since then is, back in the times, the internet was also designed out of this assumption, right? That is somehow a closed world, because the internet was never designed with security in mind. And that's because of two things. First, back then, it was not important for anything. And second, there were only a few trusted ones who had access to the internet. So the assumption was everyone who is in the internet is good and trusted. Nowadays, this changed little, and nowadays, the internet is also moving physical things. So back then, when you had a crash at your system, you may have lose your data. And today, when your car crashes, you may lose your life. And one thing that also emerged from this is that the yes, remember the attack and defense, the yes side, the attackers have way more advantage over the no side for many different reasons. Being complexity, being insecure, software, being whatever. There is a ton of reasons why it is as it is. And in a world where the internet is moving physical things and potentially causing real harm, there should be more no over the yes, actually. So the second point is customer expectations. Customers will expect certain things that they are used to. For example, if they buy something, it's reasonably secured and tested. I take this car example here. If you buy an expensive car, you'll simply expect it works and it doesn't crash all the time. And when you plug in your latest smartphone, it will work and it will be secured. And this becomes particularly true when security became some sort of commodity. So one example, in the IT world, everyone is used to buying things for getting more security, right? We're buying firewalls, EDRs, and all this stuff. In a domain like a car or a plane or a medical device, probably, people do not pay extra for security. They simply assume it's there. Like safety is assumed to be simply there. No one is buying extra money for his car that the airbag opens up faster. You simply expect it is secure, right? The third one, as I mentioned, the probably boring one, is all the legislation topic on standards and regulation. So actually, maybe I have to say sadly, that's the most impactful driver in my experience in so many discussions, so especially when it's sector specific. Because if there's a standard that you have to obey and that is required, there is no discussion anymore if you need security, blah, blah, blah. It's just a discussion, how can we meet the requirements of the standard? And meanwhile, and luckily probably, we have plenty of standards in security. And one thing that makes them very powerful to some extent is they add tangible metrics to the security discussion, which means you can argue with cost, with penalties. If we don't meet the standard, we cannot sell our products anymore. We will lose probably shareholder values. We will lose our market reputation. The management could be liable if it turns out that we did not meet these requirements, and so on. Yeah, and lastly, and I have also to say again, sadly, that's probably the weakest one of the four, is the experienceable added value. So what I mean with that, demonstrate the value of security. And this is a hard thing to do, a hard thing to market, a hard thing to advocate. So that's why security is mostly being demonstrated by its absence and the consequences of its absence. So, yeah, how can we turn now all this into yes? I mean, we cannot go out and do technological disruptions or change the market requirements or drive new standards on a daily basis at least. So here is a simple story of an example that has the unexpected factor in it. It's redacted and oversimplified because actually it's based on real world examples. But it incorporates a couple of the lessons and things mentioned earlier. So picture this. There is a product, a system, which is intensively complex, highly networked. It's built on a closed world assumption, and it's highly engineered. So, yeah, during security review and the design phase, there were plenty of discussions, what could be the right level of security and so on. And since it's also, let's say, an accessible system to the outside, not something that is inside a data center, there was also the discussion of, hey, we should, make sure all components and all these distributed systems which are interconnected there should be authentic and trusted, which would imply we would need some sort of network access control, hardware-rooted security measures, and many more such things. But, no, because there is no security budget for this, and also technically it's infeasible because we had to replace many things and redesign many new things. So yeah, it was done without such things. Then at the testing phase later on, it turned out indeed, okay, it's very hard to access, very hard to find a way, tried out many things, nothing worked. But then there was this camera. I mean, not a camera like this, but you get the point. There was something accessible from the outside where they say, and you guessed it already, it's my favorite, no one will ever access this and you cannot, detach it and whatever. And it turned out you can. Even without tooling, with a little bit of practicing, you were able to detach the lens of this device. And surprise, surprise, the unexpected thing happened. There is a network cable besides. So let's connect to it, see what it happens. And yeah, there were security measures, but pretty basic ones actually. So nothing like as it would originally have been suggested. So it was easy to evade. Next surprise, next unexpected factor. And then, being in this network, turns out this device and its network cable was directly connected to the main central control system of this entire thing. You remember the Windows 95 example earlier? Like, yeah, that was even more unexpected. So, what did we do? We made it experienceable. So, by demonstrating to do something that everyone was saying, oh, that's impossible, inaccessible, blah, 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 whatever, we could open up the front doors, in this case, and this was something that is, understandable to everyone, that, doors open, that's a problem. Doors closed, all good. But even then, when reporting this, they couldn't believe it. And so what did we do? We gathered all them and we made a real-world practical demonstration. The reaction was sort of like this, kind of. Even though, because it's a closed word assumption and no one will ever connect to this, blah, 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 you know it. There were a couple of other things that made it fun, because you could not really remediate. For example, firewall rules were rooted in hardware. Because they said, we will make it unchangeable. No one ever can change it again. Not even if an attacker gets access, you cannot change the firewall rules anymore. So yeah. In this case, it was, they had to resign the whole thing. And in the end, it even made the security budget being revised. The formerly no turned into a yes. And, showing, let's say, demonstrating the experienceable value of security, in this case, helped turning a no into yes. Certainly, we cannot turn every no into any yes, like in the previous example, and at the same time of no, at the same time, we cannot always be in security at the department of no, right? And while, as I mentioned initially, saying yes feels good, saying yes to everything and anyone is also not the ideal solution. So what can we do? Think of my initial picture, with attack being the yes, defense being the no. Instead of saying always the department of no, always being the department of yes, we can carefully consider our yeses and nos in security, which means if we have to make a decision, do it carefully, do it well balanced, be consistent in your decisions, be open alternatives if you have to say no. And if you have to say no, say it early. Align with the business goals when you say yes or no. And most importantly, foster with your stakeholders openness, empathy, and trust, because that's at the end what keeps the thing going. So balance well your yes and no's, your attack and defense. Say yes to no more often, even if it's harder. Turn a no into yes where it's feasible. May not be in every case, but in sometimes. And lastly, and most importantly, say yes to all the awesome talks that will be ahead today at this PSI Munich 25. Thank you.
Maybe on?
Turn on?
Hello?
Huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Martin. So maybe sorry. Maybe a follow-up. I really liked your story about the university. So maybe a meta point I'd like to make to everybody who's here. Besides Munich is for everyone. Security enthusiasm or experience or not. We actually are very happy to see people who are from all different fields, be it in IT or outside IT, who are here. Your perspective is welcome. And I think the most important thing that you can do is participate in the discussions and bring your stories. And the small meta point I have, if you have a driver's license in Germany, you probably have one that doesn't expire. So you must have a picture from the time when they didn't let you in.
I'm Austrian, sorry.
Okay.
But I have also a driver license that doesn't expire. So
I wonder how that is with image recognition these days when you need to rent a car.
I didn't face into any problems, actually, because in many cases they take this paper thing and make a paper copy of it.
Okay.
I don't know what they do with it,
Digitized.
but yeah.
Yes. Welcome. Excellent. Good. So maybe do I have a first question for Martin? I do not see a raised question here. Okay. Wow.
So I think I'm supposed to speak into this thing. Thank you, Martin. This was awesome. And my question is, so you mentioned becoming the department of enablement. Do you have any kind of secret recipes? Any thoughts on that one? Like how, instead of being the department of yes or the department of no, how to have security as an enabler?
Yeah, good question. So I think from the first, or from the 4 examples I brought, I think actually that really, or unfortunately, the standard exploring thing is the most powerful one, but you can also use the weakest one, which is showing security, to demonstrate that there is a value and that it is a good idea to have a healthy relationship between the cost that you spend on security and the damage you can potentially have if you don't, right? So, and for this, I think secret ingredients, in my experience, is one I try to bring out a little bit is trust. Trust among your stakeholders you're dealing with. You have to say yes or no. Carefully decide if you have to say yes or no, and then give yourself certain guidelines. If you have to give, or when you give a yes and a no. I gave a few very high-level examples at the end, but I think trying to be transparent and consistent is a good thing. And in the end, I would not say always no, but I would be rather cautious to not say yes too often than rather saying no too often. Right? Yes, exactly.
Thank you. Do we have another question? Maybe anybody in the back?
Doesn't appear to be a case.
Then I will not stop people from heading to the coffee break. Please be back here at 10, I believe. A little bit before. Yeah. And thank you, and enjoy the rest of B-Sides.
Thank you.